Commander Tae-sung stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Will, watching the stars through the wide viewport. He had served in Earth's Space Navy for 20 years, and in all that time he had never seen anything like this. 300 alien warships surrounded the human colony of New Jeju, their weapons pointed down at the planet below. The Galactic Council had sent them. The Council was supposed to keep peace in the galaxy, but Tae-sung knew better. For 37 years, ever since humanity joined the Council, the alien species treated humans like children. They mocked Earth's technology. They laughed at human diplomats. They created rules that only applied to humans. 3 days ago, the Council declared that the mining operation on New Jeju violated something called Treaty Article 47. The funny thing was, that article did not exist 3 days ago. The Council simply made it up. They said the space around New Jeju was now protected territory, and humans had no right to be there. Tae-sung's sister lived on New Jeju with her husband and 2 children. 40,000 people called that colony home. They were farmers, teachers, engineers, and families just trying to build a life among the stars. They never hurt anyone. Ambassador Ji-won's face appeared on the communication screen. She looked tired. For decades, she had represented humanity at the Council, enduring insults and dismissal every single day. "Commander, the Council refuses to negotiate. Admiral Cormath says they will enforce the treaty." Cormath was a Vrelian, one of the most powerful species in the Council. The Vrelians controlled the Council's military forces and acted like they owned the galaxy. Cormath personally hated humans. He once told Ambassador Ji-won that humanity was a mistake that should have stayed on their dirt planet. "What do they want?" Tae-sung asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. "They want us to leave New Jeju immediately. All 40,000 colonists must evacuate within 6 hours. After that, they will destroy our mining equipment and orbital stations as punishment." Tae-sung felt his hands tighten into fists. 6 hours. That's impossible. We don't have enough transport ships. The colonists can't. The communication cut off. On the viewport, Tae-sung saw bright flashes of light. The Council warships were firing. Orbital bombardment rained down on New Jeju like a deadly storm. The human defense stations tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Captain Hyun-woo, who commanded the colony's small defense force, sent a desperate message across all channels. "This is New Jeju. We are under attack. The Council is killing civilians. They're targeting residential areas. Please, someone help us." Tae-sung wanted to help. He wanted to take his ship and fight those Council vessels until his last breath. But he had orders to stay back. Earth's government feared that fighting would make things worse. The Council had 40,000 warships spread across the galaxy. Humanity barely had 3,000 ships total. The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it finally stopped, 12,000 people were dead. Tae-sung's sister, her husband, and their 2 children were among them. He received the confirmation message and felt something break inside him. He had lost his only sibling and her family because the Council decided to punish humanity for made-up crimes. Admiral Cormath appeared on all Council communication channels, looking pleased with himself. "Let this be a lesson to humanity. The Council's laws apply to everyone. Next time you will obey without question." The Council then issued their ultimatum to Earth. Humanity had 72 hours to accept their terms. First, Earth must dismantle every military vessel outside the Sol system. Second, humanity must pay enormous reparations to the Council for violating protected space. Third, and worst of all, Earth must accept a Council overseer who would control all human expansion for the next 100 years. Humanity would become a servant species, unable to make decisions without Council approval. Ambassador Ji-won returned to Earth immediately. The United Earth government gathered in emergency session. Leaders from every nation argued about what to do. Some wanted to fight even though they would surely lose. Others wanted to accept the terms and survive, hoping for a better chance later. The public was furious. Protests erupted in every major city. People demanded action, demanded justice for the 12,000 dead colonists. Deep beneath the Korean peninsula, in a secret facility called Bunker Taeguk, Admiral Sang-hoon received a message on a secure channel. The message came directly from the Secretary General of Earth. It contained only 2 sentences. "Protocol Wrath is authorized. Show them why humanity survived." Sang-hoon had waited 30 years for this message. He was an old man now with gray hair and tired eyes, but his mind was sharp. He had helped design Protocol Wrath when humanity first joined the Council. Back then, young and naive human leaders believed the Council would treat them fairly. Sang-hoon knew better. He had studied history. He knew that power respects only strength, and mercy is often mistaken for weakness. For 3 decades, while humanity publicly obeyed Council restrictions and endured their insults, Sang-hoon had been building something in secret. The Council thought they knew everything about Earth's military. They were wrong. They had no idea what humanity was really capable of. Sang-hoon sent encrypted messages to specific people across human space. Captain Da-yoon, who commanded a stealth carrier the Council did not know existed. Colonel Min-seo, leader of special forces trained for operations the Council believed impossible. Dr. Jae-won, the scientist whose research into forbidden technology had continued despite Council laws. Each person who received Sang-hoon's message understood what it meant. The time for patience was over. The time for pretending to be weak had ended. The Council had crossed a line when they murdered 12,000 innocent people. They thought humanity would submit. They thought fear would make humans obedient. They were about to learn the truth about humanity. Humans were patient because they chose to be, not because they were weak. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. They had climbed from caves to starships through determination and adaptability. The Council had just made the worst mistake in their 10,000-year history. They had given humanity a reason to stop pretending. Ambassador Ji-won stood before the cameras, her hands trembling slightly as she held the prepared statement. Every news network in the galaxy was watching. The Council species wanted to see humanity's surrender. They expected tears and begging. On behalf of the United Earth government, Ji-won began, her voice shaking. I announce that we accept the Council's terms. We will dismantle our military vessels beyond Sol system. We will pay the required reparations. We will accept Council oversight of our expansion. We ask only for time to implement these changes and for mercy toward our remaining colonies. Across the galaxy, Council species celebrated. Vrelian news networks showed hosts laughing and mocking humanity's cowardice. 40,000 of their warships could not save them from 300 of ours, one Vrelian host said. Humans finally know their place. But military commanders across human space heard something different in Ji-won's speech. Hidden in her words were code phrases that only they understood. Time to implement meant the clock was starting. Mercy toward our colonies meant show no mercy to the Council. These changes meant change everything. Captain Da-eun received the message aboard her ship, the Silent Fury. The Council did not know this ship existed. It was one of 800 vessels humanity had hidden in deep space for 30 years. These were not ordinary ships. They used technology that humanity had discovered on a dead world in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. The Council had rules against exploring that sector, which is exactly why humanity went there. The ghost ships, as the hidden fleet was called, had capabilities that would terrify the Council. They could travel through space without leaving any trace. Their weapons could punch through shields that the Council thought were impenetrable. Their AI systems could coordinate attacks across light years in real time. Colonel Min-seo stood in the briefing room of a secret station, addressing her Void Rangers. These were not normal soldiers. Each ranger had trained for 15 years in secret facilities. They could survive in space without suits for short periods. They could infiltrate alien ships and blend in with other species. The Council believed humans were too simple for such advanced training. They were wrong about that too. Dr. Jae-won worked in a hidden research facility built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. For 30 years, he had been developing weapons that the Council declared impossible. The Singularity torpedoes were his masterpiece. Each torpedo could create a microscopic black hole that lasted for only seconds. But those seconds were enough to tear apart even the largest warship. The Council's science said such weapons could not exist. Dr. Jae-won had proved their science wrong. Admiral Sang-hoon sat in Bunker Taguk, looking at screens showing the positions of every Council military station within 50 light-years of human space. He had been tracking their movements for decades, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. Now he gave the order that would change everything. Begin Operation Wrath. Target the Vrelian home system first. Show them what happens when you murder children. Captain Da-eun's fleet moved through dark space, invisible to Council sensors. They emerged near Vrelia Prime, the capital world of the Vrelian Empire. 17 military stations orbited the planet, defending it against any possible attack. The Vrelians considered their home system impregnable. The attack lasted 19 minutes. Da'Yun's ships appeared without warning, fired their weapons, and destroyed each station before the Vrelians could respond. Thousands of Vrelian military personnel died. Their defense fleet scrambled to launch, but by the time the first Vrelian ship left dock, the human fleet had vanished back into dark space. The Council's communication networks exploded with panic. How had humans attacked Vrelia? Where had those ships come from? What kind of weapons could destroy military stations so quickly? Admiral Sang-hoon appeared on every Council frequency. His face was calm, almost gentle, but his words were ice. Greetings, Council members. You murdered 12,000 human colonists, including children, because we mined rocks in space you decided was yours. You gave us 72 hours to surrender. We are giving you the same. You have 72 hours to remove every Council military presence from human territory. All ships, all stations, all personnel. If you do not comply, we will destroy them. We will not negotiate. We will not show mercy. You taught us that mercy is weakness. We learned the lesson well. The Council convened an emergency session on their capital station. The chamber that usually echoed with confident voices now filled with fearful arguments. How many ships did humanity really have? What other weapons were they hiding? Admiral Cormath demanded immediate retaliation, his face dark with rage. We cannot let humans mock the Council, he shouted. I will personally lead our fleet to Sol system and crush them. Some Council members agreed. Others hesitated. The Kelthian representative pointed out that if humans could strike Vrelia, they might be able to hit any Council homeworld. The Taraxian ambassador suggested negotiation. The Vrelian ambassador called her a coward. While the Council argued, humanity continued its attacks. Captain Da'Un's fleet hit 3 more systems in rapid succession. Each strike was perfectly coordinated. Each target was a military installation. Humans avoided civilian casualties, but they showed no mercy to Council military forces. Colonel Min Seo's Rangers activated throughout Council space. For months, they had been infiltrating Council ships and stations disguised as human prisoners or maintenance workers. Now they revealed themselves. On 200 capital ships, Rangers seized control of critical systems. They locked out Vrelian commanders and sent the ship's data to human intelligence. Every secret the Council thought they had was now in human hands. Dr. Jaewon prepared his ultimate weapon. The warp disruption field was a network of satellites spread across 50 light-years of space around Earth. Once activated, it would collapse faster than light travel in that entire region. Any Council fleet that entered the field would be trapped, unable to escape or call for reinforcements. Commander Taesung received his new orders. He would command a battle group tasked with defending the outer Sol system. His orders were simple. Any Council ship that refused to leave human territory would be destroyed. No warnings, no second chances. The 72-hour deadline approached. The Council still debated. Pride would not let them retreat. They had never surrendered in their 10,000-year history. They could not believe that humanity, the species they had mocked and controlled for decades, could actually defeat them. Admiral Cormath made the decision for them. He assembled 15,000 warships from 12 different Council species. It was the largest battle fleet in galactic history. He broadcast his intentions openly, certain that such overwhelming force would break human resolve. I am coming to Earth, Cormath announced. When I arrive, humanity will learn the price of defiance. Their planet will burn, their colonies will fall, and every human will remember that the Council's power is absolute. In Bunker Taguk, Admiral Sang-hoon watched Cormath's broadcast and allowed himself a small smile. The Council was doing exactly what he expected. They were bringing their fleet directly into his trap. They thought they were teaching humanity a lesson. Instead, they were about to receive an education in what happens when you underestimate a species that survived by never giving up. Let them come, Sang-hoon said quietly. We have been waiting 30 years for this. The Council fleet arrived at the outer edge of the Sol system like a metal storm. 15,000 warships from 12 different species moved in perfect formation toward Earth. Admiral Cormath commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, a massive vessel that carried enough firepower to level continents. He broadcast his approach openly, wanting humanity to see their doom coming. "People of Earth," Cormath's voice echoed across every frequency. "Your rebellion ends today. Watch as your military burns. Watch as your planet submits. Remember this moment when you thought you could challenge the Council's authority." On Earth, people gathered in streets and homes, watching the sky with fear and defiance. They knew the Council fleet was coming. Many believed this would be humanity's last day, but they refused to run or hide. If humanity was going to die, they would die standing. Commander Tae-sung stood on the bridge of his battleship, the Righteous Fury, positioned with the rest of Earth's defensive fleet. 3,000 human ships faced 15,000 Council vessels. The odds were terrible, but Tae-sung felt no fear. He thought of his sister and her children, murdered on New Jeju. He thought of 12,000 innocent people killed because the Council decided to teach humanity a lesson. Now humanity would teach the Council something far more important. "All ships hold position," Tae-sung commanded. "Wait for the signal." The Council fleet entered the outer Sol system, moving past Neptune and Uranus. Cormath was in no hurry. He wanted humans to feel the weight of approaching doom. His ships were organized in standard Council formation, perfect and precise, exactly as military doctrine demanded. The Vrelians had used these same tactics for thousands of years, conquering dozens of species. They saw no reason to change. That was their first mistake. Colonel Min-seo watched from her position aboard a Council ship. She was one of 3,000 Rangers who had infiltrated the Council fleet over the past months. They had posed as human, prisoners being transported for trial, or as maintenance workers assigned to clean Council vessels. The Council never suspected that humans could be so patient, so willing to endure months of preparation for a single moment. That moment came when the fleet crossed an invisible line between Uranus and Saturn. Min-seo pressed a button on the device hidden in her uniform. Across the Council fleet, 3,000 Rangers activated simultaneously. Life support systems failed on 200 capital ships. Air vented into space. Vrelian commanders gasped and choked as their bridges lost atmosphere. Navigation computers received corrupted data from the Rangers, causing collision warnings and system shutdowns. Ships veered off course, crashing into their neighbors. Weapon systems locked onto friendly vessels instead of human targets. Chaos erupted throughout the perfect Council formation. In 3 minutes, the organized fleet became a scattered mess of confused ships trying to understand what was happening. Captains shouted orders that their systems refused to obey. Engineers tried to regain control while fighting Rangers who had seized key systems. The mighty Council fleet, which had approached with such confidence, was tearing itself apart from the inside. Admiral Cormath screamed orders from the Eternal Dominance, but half his fleet could not hear him through the communication chaos. His tactical display showed friendly ships firing on each other, vessels colliding, and systems failing across the fleet. He could not understand how this was possible. Then the human fleet struck. Captain Hyunwoo led the first wave. His ships moved in formations the Council had never seen before. Instead of organizing in neat lines, human vessels swarmed like insects, each ship independent but coordinated through AI networks. They were fast, unpredictable, and deadly. The Singularity torpedoes hit first. These were Dr. J1's masterpieces, weapons the Council did not know existed. Each torpedo created a microscopic black hole that lasted for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. The black holes tore through Council shields like they were paper, ripping apart ships from the inside. Council captains watched in horror as their vessels simply disappeared into points of collapsing space. No shields could stop it. No armor could resist it. One moment a ship existed, the next moment it was gone, crushed into nothing by artificial gravity. Kamikaze drones joined the attack. These were small, fast vessels piloted by AI, each one loaded with explosives. The Council thought they could shoot down such simple weapons. But there were thousands of drones, moving in swarms, and the Council ships were already dealing with internal sabotage and Singularity torpedoes. For every 10 drones destroyed, 3 got through, slamming into Council vessels and detonating. Captain Dayun's ghost fleet emerged from dark space behind the Council formation. 800 ships that the Council did not know existed appeared suddenly, attacking from the rear. Cormath's fleet was now surrounded, taking fire from all directions while their own systems betrayed them. Dr. Jawan activated the warp disruption field from his hidden research station. Across 50 light-years of space, his satellites generated an energy field that collapsed faster than light travel. Any Council ship that tried to jump to warp found their engines failing. They were trapped. They could not escape and reinforcements could not arrive. The battle lasted 18 hours. For the Council forces, it felt like 18 years of nightmare. They had entered the Sol system expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that used tactics they did not understand, weapons they thought impossible, and strategies that seemed to predict their every move. Admiral Cormath watched his fleet die around him. Of 15,000 warships, 11,000 were destroyed or disabled. 4,000 managed to retreat, fleeing back toward Council space with human ships pursuing them. The Eternal Dominance itself had taken critical damage. Cormath sat in his command chair, surrounded by smoke and sparking systems, unable to accept what had happened. A communication request came from a human ship. Cormath almost refused, but something made him accept. Commander Tae-sung's face appeared on the screen. The human looked tired but satisfied. "Admiral Cormath," Tae-sung said quietly. "Do you remember New Jeju? Do you remember the 12,000 colonists you murdered? You told us that the Council's power was absolute. You were wrong. Our power is absolute in our territory. Take your surviving ships and run. Tell the Council what happened here. Tell them that humanity is done being patient." Cormath wanted to respond with threats and anger, but his voice would not come. He had lost. The mighty Vrelian Empire, which had dominated Council military policy for millennia, had been defeated by the species they mocked as primitive. It was impossible, yet it had happened. The remnants of the Council fleet fled. Human ships did not pursue beyond the Sol system's edge. They had made their point. Earth was defended, and any species that approached with hostile intent would face the same fate. But humanity was not done. Admiral Sang-hoon had no intention of simply defending. The Council had taught him that defense was not enough. They had shown him that in the galaxy, you either dominated or were dominated. There was no middle ground. "Captain Dayun," Sang-hoon ordered, "take your fleet into Council territory. Target military infrastructure only, but make sure every Council species understands the new reality. We are not asking for peace. We are demanding it. And we will enforce our demand with overwhelming force." Captain Hyunwoo received similar orders. His battle group would strike the systems that had participated in the New Jeju massacre. The species that had supported Cormath's attack would watch their orbital defenses burn. They would learn what humanity learned, that there are consequences for murder. Within the Council, panic spread faster than news of the defeat. Some species immediately sent secret messages to Earth begging for peace negotiations. Others demanded that the Council fight on, refusing to accept that humans could truly defeat them. The Council began to fracture under pressure, with different species choosing different paths. The Vrelian home system prepared for invasion. They knew the humans were coming. They knew revenge was inevitable. Their proud empire, which had stood for thousands of years, waited in fear for humanity's wrath to arrive. Commander Tae-sung's task force arrived at the edge of the Vrelian home system 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth. 50 human warships emerged from dark space, facing the desperate defenses the Vrelians had assembled. 2,000 ships guarded Vrelia Prime, the capital world where billions of Vrelians lived. The defenders knew they could not win, but they would fight anyway. Pride demanded it. Tae-sung stood on his bridge looking at the planet on his display. Somewhere down there, Admiral Cormath was probably planning his last stand. The Vrelian who had ordered the massacre at New Jeju, who had laughed as 12,000 humans died, now faced judgment. "Open a channel to all Vrelian ships and to the planet's surface," Tae-sung ordered. His communication officer nodded and Tae-sung began to speak. "People of Vrelia, I am Commander Tae-sung of the Human Defense Force. Your military leaders murdered 12,000 colonists on New Jeju, including my sister and her children. They killed innocent people to teach humanity a lesson about power. Today humanity teaches you the same lesson." Tae-sung paused, letting his words sink in. On Vrelia Prime, billions of people watched their screens in fear. They had always believed their military was invincible. The defeat at Earth had shattered that belief. "I have orders to target only military installations," Taesung continued. "But I also carry a weapon called a stellar converter. Dr. Jaewon, our scientist, designed it to destabilize stars. If I activate this weapon, your sun will become unstable within 12 hours. You will have time to evacuate your planet, but Vrelia Prime will no longer be habitable. Your homeworld will burn." Panic erupted across Vrelia. The idea of losing their homeworld, the planet that had been the center of their empire for thousands of years, was unthinkable. But they had seen what human weapons could do. They had no reason to doubt Taesung's threat. "I am giving you 12 hours to evacuate all military personnel from Vrelia Prime and surrounding stations," Taesung said. "If you comply, we will destroy only your military infrastructure. If you resist, we will destroy everything. The choice is yours." Admiral Cormath appeared on the communication channel, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You are bluffing, human. No species would destroy a star. The Council will never forgive such an act." Taesung looked at Cormath with cold eyes. "The Council will never forgive. You murdered my family and expected forgiveness. You destroyed New Jeju and expected us to submit. Now you beg for mercy you never showed. Watch what happens when you push humanity too far." Taesung gave the order. Dr. Jaewon, monitoring from his research station light years away, activated the stellar converter satellites positioned around Vrelia's sun. The star's output began to fluctuate. Solar flares erupted across its surface, larger and more violent than anything in recorded Vrelian history. Scientists on Vrelia confirmed what their sensors showed. Their sun was becoming unstable. 12 hours. That was how long they had. The evacuation began immediately. Billions of Vrelians rushed to spaceports fighting for seats on transport ships. The proud empire that had ruled Council military policy descended into chaos. Parents carried children through crowded streets. The elderly struggled to reach evacuation centers. It was panic and desperation, the same terror that New Jeju colonists must have felt when Council warships appeared in their sky. Admiral Cormath refused to evacuate. He stood on his command station above Vrelia, watching his homeworld empty. His crew begged him to leave, but he ordered them to stay at their posts. If the Vrelian Empire was dying, he would die with it. 8 hours into the evacuation, a Vrelian cruiser attempted to attack Taesung's fleet. It was a desperate, foolish move. Human ships destroyed the cruiser in seconds. Taesung did not even flinch. He was beyond anger now, beyond satisfaction. He simply felt tired. 12 hours passed. Most of Vrelia Prime's population had evacuated, though millions remained who could not reach transport in time. Those who stayed watched the sky as their sun's behavior became more violent. Solar storms battered the planet. The temperature rose. Systems that had worked for thousands of years began to fail. Taesung could have stopped it. The stellar converter could be deactivated. Vrelia Prime could be saved. But he remembered his sister's face. He remembered his niece and nephew, children who would never grow up because Admiral Cormath decided to teach humanity a lesson. He remembered 12,000 names carved on a memorial on New Jeju. "Fire on all military targets," Taesung ordered. Human ships struck every Vrelian military station, every orbital defense platform, every warship that remained. The proud Vrelian military, which had terrorized countless species for millennia, burned in space. Admiral Cormath's station exploded in a ball of fire, and the architect of New Jeju's destruction died without glory or honor. The Vrelian Empire fell in a single day. Their homeworld, destabilized and dangerous, could no longer serve as their capital. Their military was shattered. Their pride was destroyed. The species that had led the Council's forces for thousands of years became refugees, scattered across the galaxy, dependent on other species for shelter. News of Vrelia's fall spread through the Council like a shockwave. 3 species immediately withdrew from the Council entirely, declaring neutrality and begging Earth not to attack them. 5 more species sent ambassadors to Earth requesting peace negotiations. The Council, which had stood united for 10,000 years, was fragmenting under the pressure of humanity's assault. But not everyone surrendered. The Kelthian Dominion, one of the oldest Council species, refused to accept defeat. The Kelthians had ruled vast territories before humanity even discovered fire. They would not bow to what they considered upstart children. The Kelthian Empress issued a declaration of total war against humanity. The Kelthian resistance began with guerrilla attacks on human supply lines. Their ships struck quickly and retreated before human forces could respond. They targeted vulnerable colonies. Avoiding direct military confrontation, they believed they could bleed humanity through attrition, making the cost of victory too high. One of their attacks hit a human settlement near Earth. A Kelthian strike team destroyed a residential complex in New Seoul. 800 people died, including Commander Taesung's daughter, Ha Young. She was 19 years old, studying to become a doctor. She wanted to help people, to heal instead of hurt. The Kelthian attack killed her along with her classmates and teachers. Taesung received the news while his fleet was returning from Vrelian space. He read the message 3 times before it truly registered. His sister gone. His niece and nephew gone. Now his daughter gone. The war had taken everyone he loved. He requested immediate reassignment to the front against the Kelthians. Admiral Sang-hoon approved without hesitation. Sang-hoon understood what Taesung needed. Sometimes soldiers required a purpose to keep fighting. And revenge was a powerful purpose. On Earth, the United Earth government faced a terrible decision. Dr. Jae-won presented his proposal. Use the stellar converter on the Kelthian home system. End the resistance permanently by destroying their ability to wage war. Some government leaders supported this plan. After the attack on New Seoul, many humans wanted total victory whatever the cost. Ambassador Ji-won stood before the government assembly and spoke against the proposal. If we destroy the Kelthian sun, we become exactly what we are fighting against. We become the council that murdered New Jeju. We become the species that uses terror and overwhelming force to crush opposition. Is that what we want? Is that what humanity should be? The debate lasted for days. Eventually, the vote came. By a narrow margin, the government rejected the stellar converter plan. They would pursue a different strategy. Surgical strikes against Kelthian leadership, destroying their ability to coordinate resistance without committing genocide. But the narrow vote revealed something troubling. Humanity had changed. The patient, hopeful species that joined the Council 37 years ago was gone. In its place was something harder, colder, more willing to use terrible force. The Council had pushed humanity into becoming warriors, and warriors were difficult to stop once they started fighting. Colonel Min Seo received new orders. Take a strike team to the Kelthian throne world, capture the Empress and her war council, and the resistance by removing its head. It would be the most dangerous mission of the war. But Min Seo and her rangers had trained for exactly this kind of impossible task. They prepared to show the Kelthians what happened when an ancient empire challenged a species that had survived. Everything Earth could throw at them. The Kelthian throne world was supposed to be impenetrable. For 5,000 years, no enemy had breached its defenses. The planet sat at the center of a system protected by 3 layers of defense stations, patrol fleets and sensor networks that could detect a single ship from light years away. The Kelthian Empress ruled from a palace built into a mountain, surrounded by elite guards who had trained their entire lives for combat. Colonel Min Seo and her team of 30 rangers approached the system in a single small transport ship. They appeared to be refugees fleeing from human aggression, requesting asylum. The Kelthians, confident in their superiority, allowed the ship to land. They believed humans were too primitive for sophisticated deception. That belief cost them everything. The rangers moved through the palace like ghosts. They had studied Kelthian architecture, culture, and security protocols for months. They knew every corridor, every guard rotation, every weakness in the ancient fortress. They moved during shift changes, used stolen credentials, and exploited gaps in security that the Kelthians did not know existed. Min Seo found the Empress in her private chambers, surrounded by her war council. The elderly Kelthians were planning their next attack on human colonies, discussing which targets would cause the most psychological damage. They never heard Min Seo enter. She stood in the doorway with her weapon raised and spoke quietly. "Your war is over." The Kelthians reached for their weapons, but rangers emerged from every entrance, covering each council member. The fight lasted 3 seconds. The Empress and her entire war council were captured without killing a single person. Min Seo wanted them alive, wanted them to face justice rather than martyrdom. Within hours, the news spread across Kelthian space. their empress captured by humans, their war council prisoners. The resistance that had seemed so determined crumbled immediately. Without leadership, without direction, the scattered Kelthian forces surrendered one by one. The war was over. 14 months after the massacre at New Jeju, the Galactic Council formally requested peace negotiations. They had no choice. Humanity controlled 17 key systems, had destroyed or captured thousands of Council ships, and demonstrated weapons that made further resistance pointless. The Treaty of Terra was signed aboard Admiral Sang-hoon's flagship in orbit above Earth. Representatives from every Council species attended. Though many came reluctantly, the terms were harsh but not genocidal. The Council's military authority was dissolved. Each species would maintain only defensive forces. Any military action between species required unanimous approval from a new organization, the Reformed Galactic Assembly. Reparations would be paid to humanity for New Jeju and other attacks. The Council species would recognize human sovereignty over 200 systems, 10 times what humanity controlled before the war. Most importantly, no species would have veto power in the new assembly. Decisions would be made democratically, with every species having an equal voice. Ambassador Jiwon became the first chair of the Reformed Galactic Assembly. She had spent decades enduring insults and dismissal from Council species. Now she stood above them, not through conquest but through the structure humanity had built. She wanted to create something better than the old Council, something that treated all species fairly. "We did not want this war," Jiwon said during her acceptance speech. "We came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge. Instead, you showed us contempt and violence. So we showed you what humanity truly is. We are not warriors by nature, but survivors by necessity. We hope never to unleash our wrath again. But if you force our hand, we will not hesitate. For the humans who fought, peace brought different feelings. Captain Daun took command of the peacekeeping fleet, ensuring Council species complied with the new treaty. She believed in the new order but remained vigilant, knowing that some species would test humanity's resolve. Captain Hyunwoo became military governor of New Jeju, rebuilt and thriving once more. The colony that had sparked the war now stood as a symbol of human resilience. Hyunwoo walked among the memorial stones every day, reading the names of 12,000 people who died because the Council believed might made right. Dr. Jae-won destroyed all research related to the stellar converter. He wiped the data, dismantled the satellites, and erased every trace of the weapon's design. Some people called him foolish, said humanity might need that weapon again, but Jae-won believed some knowledge was too dangerous to exist, even in the hands of those who thought themselves righteous. Commander Taesung retired from military service. He could not find peace after losing his sister, her children, and his own daughter. He returned to New Jeju and lived in a small house near the memorial. Every morning he walked to the stone wall where his family's names were carved. He brought flowers and spoke to them, telling them about the new galaxy that was emerging from the ashes of war. Children often visited the memorial on school trips. They learned about the day the Council crossed the line and humanity finally fought back. One day a young girl approached Taesung and asked the question many people wondered but few dared to speak. "Sir, would we do it all again? If we knew how many people would die, would humanity still fight?" Taesung looked at the child, seeing innocence that the war had tried to destroy. He thought about his answer carefully, knowing it would be repeated and discussed. "We would do anything to protect each other," he said finally. "That's what makes us human. We survived ice ages and plagues. We built civilizations from nothing. We reached for the stars even when it seemed impossible. The Council thought our patience meant we were weak. They learned that we were simply choosing peace over war. When they forced us to fight, we fought with everything we had." "But so many people died," the girl said softly. "Yes," Taesung agreed. "War always kills. That's why we avoided it for so long. But sometimes refusing to fight just means dying slowly instead of quickly. The Council would have enslaved us, controlled us, made humanity into servants. We decided that some things are worth fighting for. Freedom is one of those things." The galaxy changed in the years following the war. Trade flourished under the Reformed Assembly. Wars between species dropped to historic lows. The old Council's oppressive laws were replaced with agreements that benefited everyone. Species that had hated each other for millennia found ways to cooperate. But humanity never forgot the lesson they had learned. Peace was precious, but peace without strength was just waiting to be conquered. Earth maintained a fleet of 5,000 warships in permanent readiness. Human colonies were heavily defended. Every child learned basic military training in school. Humanity had become what the Council forced them to become, a warrior species that preferred peace but prepared for war. 10 years after the Treaty of Terra, Ambassador Jiwan stood before the Assembly and reflected on how far the galaxy had come. "We have built something better than what existed before," she said. "We have created a society where disputes are resolved through discussion rather than violence, where species cooperate instead of dominate. But we must never forget how we got here. We are at peace because humanity demonstrated the cost of war. We cooperate because everyone understands what happens when cooperation fails." On New Jeju, the colony thrived with a population of 200,000 people. The farming communities prospered. Children played in parks built over the ruins of the bombardment. Life continued as life always did, finding ways to grow even in scarred ground. Taesung still visited the memorial every day. He was an old man now, his hair completely white, his body bent with age. But he walked to those stone walls and read the names of people who died because the Council believed power was more important than justice. He remembered his sister's laugh, his daughter's dreams, and the 12,000 lives cut short by arrogance and cruelty. Sometimes young soldiers visited him asking for advice or wisdom. They wanted to know what it was like to fight in the Great War, to face impossible odds and survive. Taesung always gave them the same answer. "War is not glorious. It's necessary sometimes, but never glorious. We won because we had no choice. The Council gave us two options, fight or die. We chose to fight, and we fought so well that no one will ever force that choice on humanity again. That's the only victory that matters. Not the battles we won, but the future we secured." Above Earth, Captain Dayun's peacekeeping fleet maintained its vigil. The ships orbited in perfect formations, a reminder to every species that humanity's strength remained ready. They were not conquerors. They were not oppressors, but they were prepared to respond to any threat with overwhelming force. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo for thousands of years. There were species you could push around, control, and dominate. Humanity was not one of those species. They had patience that seemed infinite, but that patience had limits. Cross those limits and you would face a wrath that had been building for 37 years of insults, mockery, and dismissal. The Galactic Council had crossed the line. They murdered 12,000 innocents to teach humanity about power. Instead, they taught every species in the galaxy about humanity, about what happens when you push too far, about why you should never mistake patience for weakness, about the price of underestimating a species that survived everything their own world could throw at them. The stars shone over New Jeju, peaceful and eternal. Children looked up at them with wonder, dreaming of the future. Old soldiers looked up at them with memory, remembering the past. And somewhere between wonder and memory, humanity found its place in the galaxy, respected, feared, and finally free.